Hello, YouTube. So we are back. If you're new here, please like and subscribe. If you're not new, hey. So today I am going to pick up where we left off of our last story. Our last video was our introduction and kind of gave a very brief history of our infertility journey. So we left off right after our transfer. So we did IVF. We did a frozen embryo transfer, which means that you do your egg retrieval first, and then you wait usually at least a month, and then you go and do your transfer. So where I left off, we talked about how we had finally decided to transfer 2 embryos. So my mom and my husband had to work. He couldn't take off any more time. And I explained a little bit. We traveled to Arizona, to a low-cost fertility clinic in Arizona. So we had to travel a lot. And my egg retrieval I was in Arizona, I think, close to 2 weeks for my egg retrieval. And then the transfer is just a day, but I think we stayed maybe 2 or 3 days. Just to be sure afterwards. So we did our transfer, and my mom and I traveled together. We came home, I think 2 or 3 days after I did a transfer. So not even gonna lie, if you've gone through infertility, if you're trying to conceive, you know how hard it is not to pee on a stick. Like POAS, addict, right here. So they tell you after your transfer, after IUIs, during fertility treatment, during your 2-week wait, which is the time that you wait to find out if you're actually pregnant, not to test, because usually it just causes stress and anxiety, and we typically all try and test way too early, and then we get a negative, and then we get super upset and stressed and blah, 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 blah. So me, being me, started testing the day after my transfer. I didn't do a trigger shot, so I didn't have to test out a trigger or anything like that. So I started testing the day after. Having gone through infertility, I really wanted, and having losses, having had miscarriages, I really wanted to be able to see the progression if I did get pregnant. So I started testing the day after and kept all of my pregnancy tests. Obviously, if I hadn't gotten pregnant, if I hadn't gotten a positive, then I wouldn't have had a positive, and I just would throw them all away after I cried for a really long time. So we did. Okay, also a little side note, this video will have, I feel like, a lot more explanation on the emotional part of having gone through infertility and recurrent loss. So I'm gonna try my very hardest to keep it together and not shed too many tears, but heads up, and if I do, I'm really sorry, and I cry very easily. So I started testing, and I got my very first, it was super faint, on day, I think it was day 3 or 4. So 3 or 4 days after we did our transfer, I got a positive. It was actually the day my mom and I got home from the airport from Phoenix. I tested as soon as I walked in our door and got a positive. So of course I was super excited. I texted my mom and my sister and showed them, like, they could see that it was positive. So Chris and I got an invitation from some sweet friends to go to the lake. If you know anything about fertility treatment, you're not supposed to submerge yourself in water so after your egg retrieval, you're not supposed to submerge yourself until your next cycle, and after your transfer, you're not supposed to be submerged in water, I think, until you're just released. Usually they wait until after your first ultrasound, to be sure that everything's looking good. I didn't follow those rules. Forgot to tell you this. After our egg retrieval, Chris came and met me for the retrieval the day before, and then he and I stayed a few days afterwards so that I could recover, and then we flew straight to the beach. Well, nobody told me before my retrieval that I could not go swimming until the day of until the day of my egg retrieval. And I about cried in that waiting room. I was like, wait a minute. I can't do what? And the nurse was like, yeah, you can't go swimming. You didn't know? And I was like, no, I've told like everybody, all my nurses, everybody who's coordinating care, like that I was coming, we were doing this, and then we were going to the beach. Did they think I was just not gonna swim? Like, what? So I heard her words and I did not listen to them because we straight went to the beach afterwards and I swam. So, disclaimer, don't do what I did. Maybe that's why I ended up with triplets. I don't know. Just saying, follow directions and don't be like me. So, after back to our transfer, we get home, we get an invitation to go to the lake with some friends, and we go. I'm sure that was really good. Nice, clean lake water. But we went and we had tons of fun, and we were just on this like high. Like, we were so excited and happy to finally be hopeful that we had done all of this and that this might actually be the baby that makes it to us. So we went, we had fun. We were at the lake all day with friends. And then, so that was, my transfer was August 1st. That would have been about August 5th. And then my first ultrasound was not for like 2 more weeks. I think it was the end of August. And that was torture. I did have blood work. They tested my levels. They only tested my levels twice because my HCG was already so high. I think my first test was like 700 something, and then 2 days later it was already 1700. So after that they were like, it's doubling, you're good, we're not doing any more. So I had a feeling, so we knew we transferred 2 embryos, and I just knew that both had stuck. Of course you kind of go back and forth and are like, yeah, really, is it? Maybe, no. But I really knew that both had stuck. So then, having a higher HCG, I was pretty certain that we were having twins. So the solar eclipse was the day before our very first ultrasound appointment. And I want to say that was like August 26th-ish. I don't remember. It's not really important. So we, Chris and I were together for the solar eclipse, and we were off work. I can't remember. He didn't work. For some reason, he was home. And we decided to go to Stone Mountain to watch the eclipse. So we are there along with the rest of Georgia, Florida, South and North Carolina, and Tennessee. Like, everyone decided to go to Stone Mountain for this darn thing. So we're there and we're waiting, and so the way that it was working with Stone Mountain, there's like a gondola that goes up to the top of the mountain. So everybody was going up to the top of the mountain to watch the eclipse. So we're there and we're waiting in a line full of 537 million people, and I needed to go to the bathroom. And I go to the bathroom and I was spotting, and I like panicked. I mean, I guess I didn't when I like think about it, but I went to the bathroom and I came out, and like, I'm sure I had tears in my eyes and I couldn't like hold it together, and Chris is like looking at me and he's like, what is wrong? What is wrong? And so of course I didn't want to tell him. Look, y'all, I'm already starting to tear up. So I was like, and it wasn't even that much. Like, that was the thing. Like, I knew this was normal. I knew it happens. Like, I had done IVF. I was going through all of this It's normal. Like, and even during early pregnancy, spotting is normal. I mean, I was having cramping, but I've always had cramping, especially with like implantation. So even the cramping wasn't abnormal. So I get back to the line and he can like 100% tell. And I'm like trying my hardest not to have to talk about it, because if I have to talk about it, then I'm going to cry. Like if you know me, I am so bad at being able to talk through something without crying. I can't do it. And then I like, it doesn't even matter if I'm crying hard. It's like I can't talk if there are tears in my eyes. For some reason, I just like can't stop breathing, stop talking, nothing. So I'm like, he's asking what's wrong. And Chris is very protective, and he wants to be able to fix things. And I knew that like there was nothing that he or I could do in this moment. So I really didn't want for him to get upset and for us to ruin this. Like, even if I had been having a miscarriage, like there was nothing that could be done to prevent it. And I knew that. So I go out and he's, Caitlin, what's wrong? What's wrong? And I'm like, nothing, please, nothing. I'm fine. And so the more he's asking me, the more I think about it, and then like tears are in my eyes. So then the more I've got tears in my eyes, he's like, what is wrong? So finally I was like, I'm bleeding. Shh. And so then his face like drops, and I was like, just don't say anything. Be quiet. Don't say anything, because we've got people all around us. So I somehow convinced him that I was okay and that I didn't want to leave. We were going to the doctor tomorrow. There was nothing that we could do. And so we went and we watched the solar eclipse. If you did not watch the solar eclipse, you didn't miss anything. Because I guess that was our fault. We were not in the path of totality. But we were dang close. So we thought there was going to be a lot better than it was. I was not impressed. Back to our story. So we go home, and I really don't even remember the rest of that day. So obviously I was kind of able to put it out of my head, and I don't know, I probably went home and laid in the bed and cried. I could be lying to you. So I do remember the next day. We went to our doctor, and so my doctor, the doctor that I see, he actually owns a midwifery, and the way that it works is for a normal low-risk pregnancy, you see the midwives, and if there's a reason for you to see the high-risk specialist, then you go over to see him. But his office, he had been kind enough to actually do my monitoring during my IVF cycle. So you have to go and get ultrasounds like every other day. And sadly, the clinic that we did our IUIs with here in Georgia, when we decided to do IVF in Arizona, you have to call for your cycle day 1 monitoring. And we called and called, and they never called me back. So I was not about to let them screw up this cycle. And so luckily I called my doctor, who was the doctor I had been with for my first pregnancy when I miscarried. And he was so sweet. Was like, yes, come in, we've got this, like, you're fine. Side note, it is the most awkward feeling in the world to be at an OB's office when you are not pregnant and you 100% know you're not pregnant. Nobody knew what to do with me. Nobody knew what was going on with me. It was hilarious. And this is a really funny story. So you have to measure the follicles. I explain a little about what that is. But so every cycle you have follicles. Inside the follicles are your eggs. So when you're doing fertility treatment, they are monitoring the follicles to see if they are maturing. So part of this monitoring was that they needed to count how many follicles I had and measure them. Follicles are not very big. And you do not get to use the abdominal ultrasound for a follicle count. So I go in and I'm like, oh, I don't know if she knows. For the ultrasound tech, I was like, oh, I don't know if she knows what's going on. Like, I have the paper that says I need a follicle count. They did not know. They did not know what was going on. I come in and I'm like talking to him. I was like, yeah, so I'm just having my follicles counted and I need to know how many and how, like, what the size is on each side. She's like, okay, lay down, pull your shirt. And she's like, it's the abdominal ultrasound. And I was like, that's not gonna work. Oh yeah, sometimes they're big enough for you to be able to see. I said, okay, go ahead and try. 0.25 seconds later, here comes the wand. I was like, man, I told you we were gonna need Wanda from the beginning. I don't know why you wasted your time. So so she gets Wanda and we get close and she starts counting all of the follicles. And after a few minutes, I notice that she's taken pictures of them, but she hasn't measured them. And I was like, oh Lord, I have a lot of follicles. I had like, I don't even remember how many. Maybe 11-ish on each side. Probably, that's what my average normally was. She did not measure them. So, luckily you were able to go back in. So she had saved all of the pictures of them and was able to go back in and measure afterwards. Praise Jesus, because neither of us wanted to be up in there any longer. So it was just kind of awkward. Everybody else was there seeing their baby and I was there seeing my follicles. Okay, so that was during. So luckily he had been amazing. So we already knew that I was high risk. We already knew that we needed ultrasounds early. Normally even high risk, he wouldn't do them this early normally. I think my first was about 6 weeks. And if you know anything about pregnancy and development, there ain't nothing to see at 6 weeks. So, but when you're doing fertility treatment, they do want to do early ultrasounds so that they can see if an embryo has implanted in your uterus, how many, all of those things that they can look at. They're not necessarily looking for viability at that point. So we went in for the early ultrasound at 6-ish weeks, and my mom, my husband, and myself went, and sorry, that was actually really hard. All I could remember was my first ultrasound with my first pregnancy. And it was me and my mom and my husband. And so during this time that should be so happy, it was kind of plagued by fear. That is probably the worst part of infertility and recurrent loss. Not even recurrent, just loss. The fear is hard. It is hard. So on this day where we should be so excited, we're gonna see our babies, we didn't know at that point. It was like a punch in my gut because all I could remember was the last ultrasound that I had when I should have been pregnant. So that out of the way, we go, and I knew that I was pregnant with 2. We waited and we get called back. We go into the room with my very favorite ultrasound tech, the best ever. She's so sweet. Her name is Tamala. My very favorite. We go back, and at this point, she didn't really know me because I had been there, but I hadn't really had her, and I went in there because of a baby, so I was just this weird chick coming in to have follicles measured. So we go in and you got to whip out handy old Wanda, and immediately on the screen popped up 2 beautiful little embryos. And immediately I was excited, and I told, there's 2. Da, da. So Tamala is doing everything, and she's measuring everything, and we're talking, and my mom is recording, and all of a sudden Tamala moves, and I was like, stop! There's 3 in there! And my mom was like, Kaylin, that is not funny. That is not funny. And I was like, Mom, I am not kidding. There's 3 in there. Tamala was not going to say nothing. She was, She was trying her hardest to avoid it, and I would not let her. I was like, go back. Go back, because there are 3 in there. So finally, once she realized that I knew there was 3 in there and she was not going to get around it, she zoomed out and showed us all 3 embryos. Funny little side note, my mom was not recording, and we missed that, because that would have been the best video ever. And to this day, I'm so sad that we don't have it. But so we, she zoomed out, she showed us 3, she did all of the things that she needed to do. She's like, she has a friend who has triplets, and she's like trying, I can't even explain the emotions that occur, because it was like excitement, fear, excitement, uncertainty, like, I'm pretty sure that the first words out of my mouth were, Mom, can we move in with you? And the first words out of hers were, no, you cannot. I really can't even put into words, like everything just like rushes at you at one time, and you're so excited because you've been working on this for years, and then having triplets is not normal. Like, it's a high risk pregnancy, pretty high risk. You're not going to make it to term. Well, some lucky people do. I wasn't one of them. But it's a lot. You start to worry, oh my gosh, are all 3 going to make it? Am I going to make it to term? Are we going to, I knew that I had at least 2 identicals, because we only transferred 2. So that was the only option. So then I'm worrying, do we have to worry about twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome? Like, all of the scary parts that come with triplets are being, rushing at you at the same time that all of the happy parts are also. And so then you start thinking, like, how are we going to do this? How are we going to afford this? What are we going to do? Well, all sorts of those things. So all emotions at once. So Tamala is like, girl, no, I have a friend who has triplets. Let me show. So she's like pulling out her phone, trying to show us pictures of how cute they are. And they were cute. It was crazy. Like, I wish that I could put into words, like, what it was like, because I knew that I was having 2. I joked that we could have 4, but I did not ever think that we would legit have 3 or 4 babies at the same time. Not 4 separately, at the same time. So we go in to talk to the doctor, and our doctor is like so chill. Like, sometimes you wish you would have a little more emotion, and he's like, yeah, I mean, tincture of time, like, gotta wait, we don't know. I'm like, come on, like, what? Triplets? Are you kidding? So little did I know, at our very first ultrasound, so Presley and Millie are identical. They were babies A and B, and Hayes is fraternal. She was our baby C. I'm really glad that I didn't know this until afterwards, but I really wasn't concerned with structures like at all because it was so early. And you really just don't know. Like, obviously Presley and Millie implanted very early and split early. And Hayes, my suspicion is that she implanted later, but so he's like, we just really don't know. We don't know if it's going to be triplets yet. Like, you're so early. We just don't know. So we had to have our, you don't get released by your RE, your reproductive endocrinologist who did our IVF for a while. You still are under their care for several weeks until they are confident that the medications that you're on, the regimen that you're doing is going to sustain this pregnancy. So all of my reports were being sent back to him. So I read in a report later that selective reduction was discussed, and also that basically Hayes, she was not there yet. There was her sac, her gestational sac was there, but like, if I remember correctly, there was no fetal pull, there was no yolk sac, like, which I realized later that was probably why he was like, we don't know yet. So all of that got sent to my RE, and my RE sent me a message back, and like all caps is like, if you choose to do a selective reduction, you cannot reduce the twins. You cannot reduce the identicals. If you do, you're going to lose both of them. So typically what they do for selective reduction is they typically reduce baby A, whichever baby is closest to the cervix is typically the baby that they have reduce. Hayes was our baby C, so I guess it wouldn't have been our only option, but I still think I really respect the women that have to make that choice. There's no way that I could have made it, but I do know some people who have had to make that decision, and I would not wish that on anyone in this world, because now I think if we had had to make that choice, we wouldn't have his. Knowing all three of our babies and knowing their personalities, how sweet they are, there's no way that I cannot have them. As hard as this is, as hard as it is to have triplets, and as crazy it is, like, there's nothing that anybody could have done to convince me that I needed to reduce. It just wasn't an option. I could not have done it. So to all of the women that have had to make that choice, like, I really respect you. And I know that people can be harsh and mean. And it's easy to say that you would never do that. But until you're in that situation, I think it's really unfair for people to say, there's no way. There was no way for me. I was in the position. I personally could not have done it. But there are some people who are pregnant with quads, quints. This is their only chance. And what do? So, I implore you to think about things like that. We don't want to reduce. We don't want to have high-risk pregnancy. The people who have to make this decision are usually people who are trying their hardest to get one baby into their arms. They don't want to reduce. They're just as scared as we were. They want those babies just as badly as we did. I just think that a lot of people need to take a step back and realize that even though it's a decision that maybe you wouldn't have made, it doesn't give you the right to be cruel and ugly to others. Because I promise you, that is not a decision that any woman wants to make who has been trying and trying and trying to have a baby for years. So, off of my little soapbox, I think that I probably need to wrap this one up there because it's been 30 minutes. But there's so much more to our pregnancy story. So we will pick up the next video as our pregnancy story. Like, subscribe, share, all of that fun stuff. And then stay tuned for the next part.